Hello, I am Terri Franklin, Franklin being my married name. I was born here in this great city, this great state of Columbus, Ohio, to my amazing mother, Elder Janet Kimball Smith. I always have to give her props and honor because she was a single parent and she had 4 beautiful children at such a young age. We didn't really know what it was like to be poor, even though we were. We lived with my grandmother for some time when we were younger, but it was all family, it was love, and we all lived in one big house. We were happy. My Aunt Kim was always the person that was with us all the time. She watched us while my mom was, out there doing her thing, as, sometimes moms do when they, have kids so young and, they still haven't really gotten out of wanting to be free and enjoy life. But from those times, really taught me who I was, allowed me to be who I am today. And so I'm very appreciative of the family that I have. Was everything always great? No. We had struggles, we had fears, we had down times, we had happy times, but it was amazing. It was my family. It's my family. And I love everything about them. Do we always get along? Nope. We still have rifts and tears and battles, but it's my family and I wouldn't trade them for anything. Nothing at all. Growing up on Wilson Avenue, wow. Wilson Avenue. I can't remember the address, but I remember the street. We lived in the house with my grandmother, big old house on Wilson. And down the way a little bit was where my dad's mom lived. We called her Madeir. And we spent time down there quite a bit, my sister and I, my sister Nikki Humphrey. And I always felt a little kind of like out of place or out of sorts. My dad spent a lot of time with my sister, but never really spent any time with me. He would take her places and do things with her, but would never take me. As a kid, you never understand why that is or what happens or why you go through that. And even to this day, I don't think I still understand or still know why, I was always left out or looked at as second or last. My mom and our family did everything they could to show that we were the same. We had the same mother, same father. With my father, I was always considered not to be his child. He would never acknowledge me as his child. I looked just like him, spitting image of my father. But I was always the one that was told that I was not his kid. So that did a lot to me growing up as a child, made me feel unwanted, made me look at men in a whole nother light. How could you have a daughter and not want anything to do with that daughter, not want to be that father to that daughter? But then when I look at his relationship with my sister, he was never really a father to her either. When he would come into town, yes, he spent time with her and not with me, but when he was gone, he didn't call. He didn't ask how we were. He was just not around. He was out living his life, traveling the world, singing with Patti LaBelle and being this superstar, and really didn't have any regards to myself or my sister. And that hurt a lot growing up as a kid. It caused some distance and a little turmoil between my sister and I's relationship. It made us competitive with each other. When we were kids, my aunt would put us in the living room, and how we started singing was my Aunt Kim would bring us together and she would tell me, you're gonna sing the high part and Nikki's gonna sing the low part. And whoever sings it the best will get candy after it's over. And she would bring her friends in. My aunt was young. She would bring her friends in and we would do a whole performance to Natalie Cole's live album when we were kids. That was how we started singing. We started singing the Natalie Cole's live album. So I would try to out-sing her so that I would be the person going to get the candy. So it became very, very competitive between us. Instead of us being sisters together, we started to drift apart. And we started not to like each other. And when you are in a family and your family's so close knit, it's not heard of that you don't like your sibling or that you and your sibling don't get along. My father caused the division between us. It just stuck. And we never got along. Even through our teenage years, we fought so bad, all the way up through high school to the point where my mother was just tired of it. I know my mother's prayer was that we would, have a relationship as sisters like she had with her sisters and like she had with her siblings. And I will never forget after my sister we were grown up and she was married, and we were in church and we sang a lot at Tridestone. There was a pastor or a bishop that had come, and I will never forget her, Bishop Brown. And it was during one of our conferences that we had at Tristone's Women's Conference. And she had called us down into Lady Ross's office, and she had a cup. And if anybody knows my sister Nikki, y'all know she don't drink after nobody. She don't eat after nobody. She's real funny, real particular about that. She ain't drinking and eating after nobody. And she asked us about our relationship. And we were just kind of looking at each other like, what are you talking about? Nobody really knows that beyond church that we don't really get along like we should as sisters. And she began to talk to us and minister to us and tell us that we had the same bloodline and we were from the same bloodline and we needed to be as one, and we are as one because we are sisters, and that was how God had ordained it. And she made each one of us drink out the same cup, and she had juice in a cup, and she had drank out this cup because they had given it to her after she had preached, and she had them fill it up, and she made us drink out of the cup. And as we began to drink out of this cup, we both started to cry. And we started to sob, and we started to apologize to each other. And from that day forward, we have been inseparable. And my sister is my right hand right now. I would die for her, and I know that she would for me as well. And our relationship to this day is amazing. Having her as my best friend and my sister has gotten me through some of the hardest journeys in my life. And one of them is dealing with the rejection of my dad. He's no longer here. And I was never really able to tell him how I felt or why I disliked him because I never had the opportunity to. When he moved back here from Florida, when he had gotten sick, I tried my best to create a relationship with him because, when you're growing up and you hear the words and you hear the scriptures of honor thy mother and father so that your days may be long, I tried to do that the best way that I knew how. But deep down inside, I despised him because of how he treated me. Every time I saw him, I would revertantly go back to him taking Nikki and I to the fair one time. And he was singing with Patti LaBelle, and we went. We were so excited. We got to go backstage and meet her. We were really happy about meeting Patti LaBelle because, wow, my dad sings with Patti LaBelle. They're here in Columbus. We get to meet her. And he introduced us as, this is my daughter, Nikki, and her sister, Terri. I literally sank into the floor. I was so hurt and so angry that you wouldn't even fix your lips to call me your daughter. Hi, I'm Terri Franklin. You are watching Black, Bold, and Beautiful, my story. And from that day forward, it made me view men in a whole nother light. I never trusted any man after that. I kind of used them to my advantage and to my ability to get what I needed. When I was done, I was done. It just made me view men differently. I didn't know how a man was supposed to treat a woman or a young lady. My mother never had the best of relationships until she married my stepfather, William. He was amazing to us. And I thank God that he sent him into my mom's life. He took us to look at our cars for the first time. We didn't know anything about that, about what an actual father was supposed to do. And then I thank God for my bishop, Bishop Jerome H. Ross. He showed me and taught me what a father was really like and how a father should treat his daughter. To this day, I call him Pops. That's my dad. That's what I call him. Hey, Dad, how are you? Because he treated me, and still does to this day, as his daughter. And so it taught me that all men are not the same. When I, began my relationship with Bishop Ross as him being my father, he showed me that all of these men that come in your life are not the same. And then it allowed me to view men differently and to be able to say, they're not all the same. I can trust a man and not have to give myself to them in a way to make them want me or make them like me or make them love me. So it just opened my eyes to a whole nother world of what it's like and how I should be treated as a lady. So I thank God for that. But just hearing those words, this is my daughter, Nikki, and her sister, Terri, was a blow to me. I tried my best to continue a relationship with my father up until the day that he transitioned. And my sister and I often noticed that when she would talk to him, he would try to get her to talk bad about me. And then when I would talk to him, he would get me to try to talk bad about her. And we kind of put two and two together. And we as sisters came together and said, you're not gonna do this. We are sisters. You accept us how we are or not at all. And in the end, he and I started to build a relationship, but by that time it was too late. But I was able to tell him in my own words after he left here that I forgave him for how I was treated as, growing up as a kid. I was able to forgive him and then move on in my life and be the person that I am today. And even now I still go back and think about, am I still really okay with him? Did I really forgive him? Am I really okay saying that, yes, that's my father and I forgive him? And I can say yes. Now that when I talk about him, I talk about the good things. How he, loved on my son. That was his first grandson. And every Christmas, how he bought him a truck because he wanted him to show him that even though I wasn't there for your mom, I'm gonna try my best to be there for you. And I appreciate that he did make that effort. So I can say, now that I forgive Tommy Johnson. I forgive him, I love him, and I'm happy I was able to do that so that my days can be long. Just like I'm honored to have a mother, my mom, and everything that she's done, even though he never did anything for me, he taught me how to heal, how to love, and how to move on. And so I appreciate that. I can thank him for that. There are some times that, I don't understand certain things that happen, why things had to happen to me the way that they did. Being molested as a young girl, going back to living on Wilson. We were kids, we were allowed to go outside. Back then, you trusted your neighbors on the street. You didn't think that your neighbor next door was gonna touch your kids or anything like that. And being so young, not understanding that what's happening to me is wrong, growing up, it caused me to be a little promiscuous. And I say that as, trying to find my way. Is this right? Should I be doing this? Okay. And, knowing that later on, no, it wasn't right. What was done to you was not okay. And it caused me to venture out there a little bit. And I often laugh when I tell my story to young ladies that I talk to. I used to call myself the sanctified hoochie. And it's funny now, but it wasn't then. And I say I was a sanctified hoochie because once I experienced my first sexual encounter, there was no stopping me. It was almost like I was addicted to it. And I would go places and do what I do. And then when I was done, I didn't want nothing to do with you. I was good. I was going about my way and I didn't want to be bothered. And I said, well, if men can do it, then I can do it. Why can't I do it if men do it? One day, I just couldn't take it anymore. And I said, you know what? I need to get myself together because at that time, I was serving in the church as an armor bearer. I was still singing every Sunday. I was on the worship team. I was the armor bearer to a first lady. But in my pastime, nobody knew the lifestyle that I was living. Now, my sister, she knew, but she was the only one. Nobody else knew that about me. And I got tired of it. Because after a while, when you go out there so far and you're not listening to what God is saying to you and how he's talking to you, he'll let you go until you get so far gone that the only person you can get back to is him. And so I decided I was tired. And I decided what I was going to do was I was going to give myself back to God. And I was in my bedroom. I will never forget it. And one of my little friends had left. And I was in my own apartment. And I felt so horrible. And I said, this is it. And I stripped myself and I laid on that floor and I cried out to God and I said, I am totally giving myself back to you from this day forward. I'm no longer going to be calling myself the sanctified hoochie because of what I do outside of the church. And I was like, I'm just gonna give myself to you and I'm just gonna stop. But God, I need you to help me. And he did that. And I can say that I overcame that sexual demon, that sexual immorality demon that had me bound. I had a sex demon and I had to call that thing out because I knew I had it. Nobody else might have known I had it, but I knew I had it. And I knew that I needed to be set free. And all of that came from being touched as a young girl. You find yourself doing things that you don't think you would ever do. And so I had to allow God to heal me, to heal my heart of that, to help me get over being touched as a child. And it was so far gone back in the back of my mind that I had even forgotten what had happened to me until I started experiencing those things again on my own. So I'm grateful that God was able to deliver me from that. And when he did, I met my husband at that time and got married, and things were going well, and I was so happy. And you know, he and I had gotten married and we got together, and I was like, this is it, I'm gonna be married forever. But that was just my fairy tale. I thought I would be married forever, but I wasn't. Hi, I'm Terri Franklin. You are watching Black, Bold, and Beautiful, My Story. And so during the time of being married, you know, you go through a lot of things. Marriages aren't perfect. And while in my marriage, my 6th year of marriage, was finding out, had just had my son, was so happy, had my son late, my miracle child, was told I could never have kids, and ended up getting pregnant with my son. And so, you know, as my son is getting older and growing up, the doctors are like, you know, something's going on with your blood. And I'm like, okay, what do y'all mean something's going on in my blood? So you begin to think, do I have a sexually transmitted disease because of how I was, you know, out there kicking it? You know, what are you seeing in my blood? And so I found a lump in my left breast. And so I called the doctor, and she told me to come in. And she began to do the exam, and she said, yeah, I do feel something there, and I want to send you for some more testing. So I'm like, okay. She's like, I want to send you to have a mammogram. Well, I didn't know what that was. I was 32 years old, had a 2-year-old son at home. I'm like, okay. So I called my mom, and I'm like, well, Mom, you know, I called you because I had found this lump, and I went to the doctor today, and she wants me to send me for some test called a mammogram. And my mom is like, okay, well, let's just go. That ain't nothing. You know, anytime you tell her something's wrong with you, she say, that ain't nothing. We ain't worried about that. That ain't nothing. In the back of my mind, I knew it was something, but I was just like, okay. And she said, well, when we have to go? I said, well, tomorrow. They're like doing everything right away. This was December 21st of 2007. And so the next day, December 22nd, I'm called my job like, hey, I just started a new job. I'm like, I need to go to the doctor. I'm gonna have all these appointments set up. They're like, no worries. So we go the next day, and my mom brought my Aunt Kim. And remember, I told you my Aunt Kim was always the one that really was with us as kids. She basically raised us with my mom as kids. And her and my mom are there with me, and we go and we do the mammogram, and we're there for hours. And they're taking all these pictures, and they're moving me around, and I go out, and they're like, well, the doctor wants more pictures, so you have to go back in. And so we're just going through this complete process. And we were there maybe, it seemed like forever, but it was probably about 2 or 3 hours. And then when they finally got all the pictures, the nurse comes out and she says to us, you guys are gonna meet with the doctor. He just wants to look over the rest of your films. And I'm like, okay. And so we go in and we sit down, and the doctor puts up all of my pictures on the screen, and it's like an X-ray machine. And I'm sitting down, my mom is sitting, and my aunt is sitting, and he says, well, I want to talk to you about your films. And I'm like, okay, like, tell me what's going on. And he's like, well, you see this area right here where it looks like a huge cluster? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, that's concerning, because when it's a cluster, if it was open and they were like spread out, I wouldn't be concerned. But because it's in a cluster, it appears that you may have breast cancer. And I'm like, what? That doesn't run in my family. My grandmother was our superhero, and she died in '94 of stomach cancer. So to hear that word come up again after all these years was traumatizing, because I remember us, with my grandmother and her telling us that, she was sick and she couldn't eat and something was wrong with her. And I remember the doctors telling her that it was in her mind and there was nothing wrong with her. And by the time they found out, it was too late. So to hear that word come up again all these years later, cancer, to me was an immediate death sentence. But because I know how to put on a face, I was pretty much acting like this is no big deal. My mom and my aunt immediately started crying. My Aunt Kim started crying, and my mom is like, we're just sitting there because none of us know what to say. And then he says, this is a picture of your right breast, and on the right side, you have what we call calcium deposits, which can, at some point later on in life, form cancer as well. And so I'm just sitting there like, okay, what? And so he begins to explain, I really think you need to have a biopsy. There's a really good doctor that I know at Ohio Health. He's been in this business for years. He's very good. And I'm going to get you an appointment with him, and we need to get you set up immediately. And I'm like, okay. And everything that he's saying is going in one ear and out the other. Because at this point, I've kind of like just shut everything off, because all I can hear is cancer. I don't hear any of the other options. I don't hear anything else. I just hear cancer. But I can't get emotional and I can't cry because they are emotional and they're crying at this point. So I'm like, okay, well, set me up with the appointment. What's next? What do we do next? And I'm calm and I'm just talking, okay, so what do we do next? Like, it's no big deal. And he's like, well, I'm gonna call him while we're sitting here. We'll get you set up. And so he calls the doctor, and the doctor's like, yeah, I have an opening. Let's see her tomorrow. So I'm like, okay, well, this is 3 days in a row. So the next day we meet with the breast surgeon. His name was Dr. Larry Lilly out of Ohio Health. And we go into his office, and he's an old white man. And I'm like, okay, if they got me here with this man, he must know his stuff. He looks like he's been doing this for a while. And we sit down, and he begins to go over the films, and he says, I'm gonna be honest with you. You're 32 years old. You don't have a history in your family. He said the most likely chances of you having breast cancer, I would say 0. He said, but I'm still going to check because anything is possible. He said, we just don't know, and we're not gonna let it go. And I said, okay, so what do we do next? He said, well, I'm gonna schedule you for a biopsy. So we're gonna have you come in, we're gonna do a biopsy, and from that biopsy, it will tell us if you have cancer, and if so, what type and what stage. I'm like, okay, let's do it. So my mom and of course my aunt, they're like frazzled, like, are you understanding what he's telling you type of thing? And I'm just like, no worries, let's just do it. And so a couple days go by, they schedule me for the biopsy, we go in, and the biopsy process wasn't easy because you're being numb everywhere, you're being stuck with huge needles. They were standing over top of me, and this like suction thing, needle, I can remember this as if it was yesterday. And I'm watching them do this procedure. And they stitch you up when it's over, and they send you on your way. So the next day I go to work as if nothing's wrong. I got ice packs everywhere, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to work. And ended up getting sick at work and had to leave. And it amazed me how quickly they got back to me. So that next day, I'm at home, I'm recovering, playing with my son, and my phone rings. It's 8:30 p.m. and I see the doctor's name come up on my phone. And at the time, my husband and I were sitting there, we're watching something on TV, and I'm like, this is the doctor calling. That's weird. Why would he call so late? And I answered the phone and he says, hi, Miss Franklin, this is Dr. Larry Lilly. And I said, yes. And he said, are you alone? And I said, no. I said, my husband's here. I said, why? What's going on? And he said, are you sitting down? And I said, no, do I need to? And he said, yes, I need to talk to you. And so I put him on speakerphone and I'm like, okay. And he's like, well, I called to tell you that you indeed have breast cancer. You have invasive ductal carcinoma. It is stage 2 going into stage 3. And I need to get you into surgery immediately. And I'm like, what? I'm like, okay, say that again. So he repeats it. And he said, I'm scheduling you for surgery. He said, I want to wait until after the holiday because, we need to get everything sent through your insurance, get everything set up. He was like, but you indeed have breast cancer. And he said, we need to get it out. He said, it's most likely you've had this cancer growing in your body for a long time. He said it started small, and then it just began to grow, but it was a slow growing cancer. And that's why your blood work had been off for 2 years, because it had been growing that entire time. I said, okay. I said, well, thank you for calling. He said, I'm gonna have my office contact you tomorrow. We'll get everything set up for your surgery and we'll see you after Christmas. I said, okay. I hung up the phone and I lost it. That was the first time I cried, knowing that I had breast cancer. I mean, hysterical, like couldn't calm myself down, didn't know where I was, ran upstairs. I remember running upstairs in the townhouse and I'm screaming and I'm crying and I'm like, God, why would you do this to me? This is how my grandmother left here. And I don't want to die like this. I can't understand why you would give me a miracle child only to take me from that child that you gave me. And so I'm like, I don't want to do this. And I remember in the scripture where he was saying, take this thorn from me, take it from me. Why can't you just give this to somebody else? Why would you do this to me? And I'm hysterical. I mean, crying. I mean, I had a moment. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to see anybody. Not knowing the entire time that my husband was on the phone calling my family like, we just got a call from the doctor. She's freaking out. She has cancer. It's stage 2. She's upstairs. I can't get her to talk to me. She won't come out the room. And, I'm screaming. My son is looking like, what's going on? He's crying because I'm crying. And all of a sudden, I snapped out of it. And I said, okay, God, if I have to do this, then we're going to fight. And I'm going to be okay. And I'm going to get through this. And I'm going to keep doing everything that I know to do. And I'm not going to stop doing anything that I'm normally used to doing. We're going to fight, and I'm going to get through it. By the time I left my bedroom and got downstairs, my entire family was in my living room. And they were crying, and I was crying, and I'm like, we're going to be okay. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get through this. I'm not going to die. I'm going to be okay because I have a son, and I have a daughter that I have to be here for. At the time, my daughter was she's about 16 or 17, and I was like, I have kids that I have to look after, and I'm gonna be okay, and I'm gonna get through this. And so I said, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna fight. So my family stayed for a long time. My mom kept saying she didn't want to leave. She kept saying, are you okay? I'm like, Mom, I'm gonna be all right. We're gonna be all right. We're gonna get through this. Cancer is just a word, and we're gonna get through this, and I'm gonna fight it. We're gonna be okay. And she said, okay. And so they all left, and I got myself together, got up and went to work the next day, worked the rest of the week, kept working, went to work, told them, I'm gonna be off for some time. Finally got the call, and my surgery was scheduled for January the 18th of 2008 because we waited after the new year. And on January the 18th of 2008, as I got up to prepare to have a lumpectomy, to remove the tumor. I turned on the morning news and I see my cousin April being walked out of her house. She had MS. And she was being walked out of her house by 2 police officers. And I'm like, what is going on? And my mom and them didn't want to tell me what was going on because it was the day of my surgery. And I just happened to be watching the news as I often do every morning. And I saw on the news that my little cousin, Dennis Lewis, had been murdered at their house. And I just began to cry because I was on my way to have surgery. And not only am I on my way to have surgery for breast cancer, now my cousin has been murdered. And I had to see it on the news. And so when I finally got to the hospital and was talking to my mom about it, they were like, we didn't want to tell you, we wanted to wait until this was over. And so grieving my cousin, because when they were younger, I would always go over to my cousin April's house and I would get the twins, and me and my friend Crystal, we would take them everywhere we went because we were fascinated that I had 2 twin cousins and I loved them, and we would take them everywhere. And then to hear that one of them was gone was really hard. And so after dealing with that, the surgeon comes in and we get through the surgery and they allow me to go home. And so they're like, this is outpatient, you go home the same day. And they're like, you know, once you go home, we'll run the pathology report. And if anything else comes back, then we'll call you. So I remember leaving the hospital, I was out of it. I remember my brother putting me in the car. He was crying because I really didn't know what was going on because they had me so drugged up on all the medication. And I get home and, you know, at the time, my ex-husband at the time, he was taking care of me. And I had been home for about probably a couple of days. And then the doctor calls again and he says, hey, how are you? I'm checking on you. I wanted to let you know we got your pathology report back. And I said, okay. And he says, you have to go back to surgery. And I said, what?
Kingdom Image Arts is more than just an organization. It's a beacon of hope and possibility for our community. Through our initiatives, we strive to build confidence, develop skills, and cultivate a deep appreciation for the arts and the world around us. We believe that by investing in the arts, we can create a more vibrant, resilient, and compassionate community. One where every individual feels valued, supported, and empowered to pursue their passion and dreams.
Hi, I'm Terri Franklin. You are watching Black, Bold, and Beautiful, my story. Not only was the cancer in your breast, but it was in your left lymph nodes. And we took out 12. And out of the 12 we took out, 6 of them were positive. So now we have to take you back to surgery and take out the rest of the lymph nodes in your left arm, underneath your arm, which means I had to go back to surgery the next week and be cut again. So this time I was cut under here, tubes hanging everywhere. That one was a little bit worse because they had to go into my under area here where they had cut and take out so many lymph nodes. And anybody who knows anything about the lymphatic system, when they take out lymph nodes, there's nowhere for the fluid to flow. So because of that, I now have what they call lymphedema. So this arm is a lot larger than this arm. So I had to wear sleeves and garbs, and even now, sometimes I have to put them on. I'm doing really well today, but sometimes I have to put them on. And so once that was over, he said, now that we've gotten all that out the way, you do have to have chemo and radiation. So I said, okay. So we started chemo in February of 2008. Started chemo, I had 6 months of chemo. I would go every Friday. But I was determined that I was still going to go to church every Sunday. I was still going to sing in the choir every week. I was still going to every choir rehearsal, and I would have treatments on Friday. I would come home, I wouldn't really be able to eat much. I would rest, I would sleep for hours after chemo because it took so much out of my body. I would get up on Saturday morning, I would go to choir rehearsal. I would get up on Sunday morning, get dressed, and I would go to church. That was my routine. And I did it every single week because I was determined that I was not going to let this stop me from doing what I was created to do, and that was worship. And in the midst of all of that, you know, I still had my hair, but I had my hair cut really low. And so I was like, my hair's not gonna come out. And the doctor said, well, it's not gonna come out now, but by your second treatment, it will. And so my second treatment comes along, and I'm getting dressed for church one morning, and I started brushing my little hair. I had my little curls in, thought I was cute, and my hair started to just come out in patches. And I was like, wow. And if you've never experienced that type of hair loss, it's a shock. It shocks you, like, my hair is really gonna fall out? Like, I'm gonna be bald like the people that I see on TV? And it was really hard for me to deal with not having any hair. And so I went ahead and fixed what I could so people couldn't see that. My hair started falling out. And so I had gone to church, and after church when I came home, I had called my brother. My brother's a barber. And I said, Shad, I said, I need you to cut off all my hair. And he said, sis, I love you, but I can't. And I said, what do you mean you can't? He was like, I can't do it. And I didn't understand at the time that not only was I going through this sickness, but my family was going through this sickness. They were witnessing all the changes, all the ups and downs, all the things that were happening to me physically. And so I told my husband at the time, I said, you need to cut my hair off. I said, it's falling out. I can't walk around with patches. So we went into the bathroom, and as he's cutting my hair, I'm crying and he's crying. And we're just shaving it off. And I said, it's just hair. It'll grow back, but I'm fighting for my life. It's just hair. It'll grow back. And so I started to buy all these different wigs, and I was joking, saying, well, I can be somebody different every day if I wanted to. And so I started wearing all these different wigs. And one Sunday I decided that it was church anniversary, and my sister and them were going, they were getting dressed, and I would often do her makeup for church anniversary because anybody knows Nikki, she don't wear full makeup like I wear makeup. And so I was so excited, and I was like, at this time my nails had turned black, and I was really going through it with the chemo and radiation, and the radiation was burning up my skin so you could smell like burnt skin, and I had third and fourth degree burns, and it was rough, but you would never know it to look at me. I always had my face done. I always had makeup on. I either had a head wrap on or I would have on a wig. And this particular Sunday, we were in between services, and she wanted me to do her makeup. And my wig was so tight that it was giving me a headache. So I thought, well, I'll just take it off real quick and run in here and do her makeup. And then I'll put it back on before church starts. And so I go into the office where she was getting dressed, in pastor's office. And I walked in the door, and she busted into tears. And she said, please cover your head. I can't take it. I need you to cover your head. And I'm like, what? Again, not knowing that I'm not the only person going through this sickness. My family's going through this sickness also. And so I was like, okay, I'm sorry. And I went out, and I wrapped up my head, and I said, I'm so sorry. And she just hugged me, and she cried. She said, I can't handle you like that. I can't. And I said, okay, I understand. And I had to take into consideration, you know, how my family was dealing with their sister, their daughter, their niece, dealing with cancer. Every time my Aunt Kim saw me, she cried. I don't care how I looked. She cried every single time she saw me. And so once I started getting through that, I started to heal and started to get towards the end of chemo, and things were going really well. My hair started growing back. I started feeling good. I started getting my appetite back. I was able to eat. Everything was going good, and then my marriage started to fall apart. That was one of the worst experiences of my life. I'm fighting for my marriage, and at the same time, I'm fighting for my life. And I could not get over the two. It was hard for both. Do I fight for my life, or do I save my marriage? And it had gotten to the point where we were just in two separate places. And so I made the decision to take my son and to leave. And I walked out on my marriage of 7 years. And we separated on our close to our 7th year anniversary. And I moved in with my mom, and I was like, you know, it's gonna be okay. Maybe we can fix this. Just let me get through this hurdle. And some things came up in my marriage that I had no idea was going on. There were other women, there were other things happening. And I ended up contracting an STD and couldn't get treatment because of it. And if anybody has ever been through any type of treatment where they're pumping poison into your body, it hurts for you to be touched. You don't want to be touched. You're sick all the time, and my body felt so brittle. And he could not understand that. He couldn't understand that it would hurt for him to embrace me or hug me or to rub me or to touch my skin. And I couldn't explain it to him how I felt. So he went outside the marriage and got the affection that he needed at that time. And I had to make a decision if I was going to stay or if I was going to go. And I chose to leave. And it was rough. I went through a depression that I've never been in my entire life. I stopped singing. I stopped preaching. I stopped teaching. I went to church every Sunday, and I was literally dead spiritually. It took so much out of me. I was in one of the lowest places of my life. I didn't want to sing. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't know if I trusted God at that point. I didn't know if I believed him at that point. My faith was literally shattered. It was shattered. Why would you bring me through all of this? Why do I have to go through this? Why do I have to deal with this hurt? Here it is, another man letting me down, letting me know that I can't trust him again. My heart was broken because I love hard. When I love you, I love you. And I love hard, and I loved him. I was in love with him. I loved my husband, and I did not want my marriage to end. But I knew that I couldn't stay where I was. And I was in one of the lowest places of my life. And I was just like, I'm just gonna go to church and just go through the motions. And that's what I did. But one thing I never did was I never stopped praising. I don't care if I didn't feel like it. I don't care if I didn't mean it. Every time Chris hit that organ, my feet hit the floor. So I had to let the devil know that I had the victory. And in that moment, my sister Nikki had asked me to sing a song called Worthy to be Praised that she wrote. And it was for an Easter Sunday service over at the Temple of Faith, and I will never forget it. And I went over there, and that was my first time singing in probably 2 or 3 years. And I began to minister that song. And as I began to minister that song, God delivered me from that depression and set me free. And from that day forward, I have been victorious. I have continued to praise, I have continued to worship, and I continued to be who I was. And then back on December, almost 14 years, I had celebrated 14 years of being cancer-free. And then 14 years to the very day, December 22nd, 2022, I was diagnosed with breast cancer again for the second time. This time, it was triple negative. And if anybody knows anything about breast cancer, triple negative is the one that you don't want to have. And prior to that, I had lost my cousin Tiffany to the same exact cancer. She died at the age of 32, leaving behind 3 children, which was my aunt's daughter. And I had been celebrating her journey. I had cut my hair when she lost her hair, and I wanted her to feel that she had a warrior. And I was also diagnosed with that same type of cancer that she had 14 years to the very day. Had to go through the process all over again. This time, I had to have a double mastectomy, which means I had to have both breasts removed. And then I went through the worst chemo I had ever gone through. I was so sick. I lost weight. I couldn't eat. Had to check into the hospital every Monday for fluids. It was rough. I could not have radiation again because once you have radiation one time, you can never have it again. And so just going through all of that again for the second time, God, there must be something that you need me to convey to somebody. Somebody's gonna get the glory out of this story. And so As you can see, going through that, losing my hair again, I survived a second time, had reconstructive surgery. They was able to rebuild me and make me a brand new woman. Thank God for that. And so I'm excited that even through all of that, I never lost my praise. I never lost my hope. And I am a walking, breathing, living miracle. I am, the Williams brothers said, I am a living testimony. Could have been dead and gone, but Lord, you let me live on because millions didn't make it. But I promise y'all, I'm one of the ones who did. And I'm so glad that I'm able to say that I survived the worst of times and that God brought me over and he brought me through. And I am a victorious survivor. And I have to tell my story everywhere I go, even through all of life's ups and downs, even through my childhood, the loss of my grandmother, the things I went through with my father. Everything that I've experienced in life made me who I am right now. I am victorious and I will survive and be able to tell my story to whoever God allows me to tell it to. I am not ashamed of where I've been, what I've gone through, and what I've done because it made me the woman that I am today, and I'm excited to be who I am. Anybody who is going through this journey, just know that you can make it. Just know that you can make it. One of my favorite scriptures is Psalms 118:7. I shall not die, but live to declare the works of the Lord. I spoke that to myself every day. So just know that you shall not die. There's always a plan and a purpose for God and what he has for your life. So be encouraged. Know that you can make it. You can get through anything that comes your way, anything that God brings to you. He's not bringing it to you to hurt you, but he's bringing it to you to build your character and make you stronger and make you who you are. You can find me on all social media platforms under Terri Kimball Franklin. Most people know me by Terri, so hey, if you know me by Terri, my government is Tara. I use that name at work, y'all. But if you see me out in public, say, hey girl, hey Terri, or you can call me Tara, but you can find me on Facebook under Terri Kimball Franklin. You can also find me on Instagram under Terri Kimball Franklin, as well as TikTok. You can find me on there. I often share my story about my second bout on TikTok, and also post some of the after effects and things that I'm yet currently dealing with as I've gone through this second bout of breast cancer. Hey, brother love.
You look fantastic.
Thank you.
How do you feel?
I feel amazing. I feel good.
You told your story, and you were very transparent about a lot.
Yes, there's still more. There's more in me, more to come out.
Yeah.
But yes, I would like to share my story with anybody who is willing to listen.
And I appreciate you for doing that. Your transparency is truly going to help somebody. It really is, because there's so many people that goes through things that you actually have been through. And do you know, sometimes they are ashamed to talk about that.
Right.
Yeah,
Why?
they're ashamed to talk about that. And you bring so much courage, and you've hit so much. I just can't wait for your episode to be shown, because of course people love you and people respect you, but this is a side that you don't necessarily show often because you're so joyful. You're so like, you know, when people are around you, we know we're gonna laugh. We're gonna feel a spirit of peace, or you just go sing us until we can. You know, so it's just so good to just hear that. I do have a question. Mm-hmm. Why is it important that people should tell their story?
It's important because you never know who you're going to reach. Everybody experiences something. It could be the same thing. It could be close to what you've experienced. It could be a little different from what you've experienced. But you sharing your story helps them get through what they think they can't overcome. And I thought of the name Overcomers when God gave me that name for our Overcomer Cancer Ministry at church. I had to look at it as, I can overcome anything. And if I can overcome it, I can tell somebody else, you can too.
Yeah.
You can get through this just like I did. I want people to see what a walking, living miracle looks like. You know, in this day, we read about it in the Bible, but what about now?
Yeah, what's going on right now?
Right, what do we see now?
Walking, living miracle today.
Today, in this day.
In this day.
So it's always important that you share with somebody what you're going through, because they might be going through the same thing and trying to figure out, instead of blowing my brains out, how am I going to get through this? And that might be the answer that they need. You might be the person to help them get through what they think they can't get through. Yeah.
Oh, that is amazing. Well, I can't wait. And thank you for letting us know that we are never alone.
Never.
No matter what we go through, we are never alone.
Never alone.
I'm so happy you're here.
Oh, thank you, brother.
I love you.
I love you more.